Aloha and welcome to Condo Insider, where we will delve into all issues related to condo living and condo ownership. I'm your volunteer host, Krista Stadler, joined by Parliamentarian Bruce Bishop, a PhD and Executive Director of the Parliamentary Procedure Institute. Welcome, Bruce. Thank you for being here with me, finally.
Yeah, thank you. Nice to see you, Krista. Thanks for inviting me.
So for full disclosure to the audience, Bruce and I have known each other 6 or 7 years, but I don't think we've ever had a really in-depth conversation about what you actually do for a living. But we are kind of in related fields, so I think it's very appropriate for our condo owners and folks living in condos to hear about your services. So tell me, and I've never asked you this before, what made you say, I want to be a parliamentarian? Like, I didn't even know what that word was until I met you.
Yeah, well, I get asked that question a lot, as you can imagine, followed by preceded by what is a parliamentarian. And I guess it goes back to high school when I was involved in a variety of activities in student clubs and student government in high school, and continued on in student government and fraternities in college. And all the meetings we went to, we were asked to use parliamentary procedure. And I just got very interested in the intricacies and complexities of parliamentary procedure. And when I was in college, I had a professor who was a professional parliamentarian, and I started talking to him about it. He invited me to pursue the certification program, and I did, and that's all in the history.
So do you have to have your PhD to be a parliamentarian, or is that something you just pursued in addition?
Yeah, there are no academic credentials that are required, no bachelor's or master's or PhD, but as you do know, I was a professor for many, many years, and so the PhD was just ancillary part of being the professor, but that has nothing to do with the certification program for professional parliamentarians.
Interesting. And when you taught, did you teach about using parliamentary rules and laws and whatnot?
Not in the beginning. Actually, I started off as a professor in the communication field, teaching human communication theories. So my area of expertise and focus was actually debate, persuasion theories, and that sort of thing in terms of how humans communicate in a persuasive manner. But as many, many years later, my colleagues became intrigued by the parliamentary background and actually invited me to teach courses in parliamentary procedure on the university level. And as an interesting note, at the time, which was in the early 1990s, my university was one of only 2 universities in the country that actually had upper division courses in parliamentary procedure.
Very interesting. So to bring it back around to associations and condo homeowners associations, tell me what a parliamentarian does or helps. How does it help support those organizations?
So most of my clients are very, very large organizations, national organizations, national labor unions, professional associations, and then some state associations. And then I also work with a variety of mostly large homeowners associations. And so for all of my clients, I attend the meetings. I sit right next to the presiding officer, the chair of the meeting, or the president of the association. And I'm there to offer advice and counsel of a parliamentary nature to make sure the rules of procedure are all followed correctly in order to assure a more effective decision-making process. So I'm just there to assure that they do everything correctly.
So I've been reading a little bit about, doing some investigating and whatnot, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but it sounds like in various situations, if those rules are not followed, there can actually be large legal issues that can evolve from that. Is that correct?
That's exactly why I'm there, is to keep the associations and the organizations out of trouble. And so state law, depending upon the state, here's something that's interesting. State of Hawaii, in their association laws dealing with homeowners associations, actually mandates that a particular parliamentary procedure, most people are familiar with one set of parliamentary procedures and one set of rules, and that's Robert's Rules of Order. It's the most common of all parliamentary authorities. And very interesting. The state of Hawaii actually mandates that homeowners association use Robert's Rules of Order in the conduct of their meetings, which we could have another session dedicated just to complexities and problems that that creates. But you're absolutely right. Because these rules are very specific in terms of how motions are made, how motions are debated, and how motions are voted on, and what are the procedures therein, and what can be done and how it should be done. If it's not done correctly, and there is a group of people who aren't happy with the decision, that invites the opportunity for people to actually challenge the decision, legally challenge.
Yeah, absolutely. That's very interesting. I mean, I read that you have to use some type of parliamentary rules, but the fact that it's Robert's rules here is very interesting. Do you have any clients in Hawaii right now?
Well, last time I was there, I was contacted by one of the real estate organizations in Hawaii and asked if I could work with their board. And then shortly thereafter, everything with COVID went crazy, and we, as a result of that, have not yet been able to get together. So part of what I do is training. And so I work with boards and just do a couple of hour workshop on what is parliamentary procedure and how do these rules affect you as an association or a homeowners association. And so that's what we were going to do with this particular association. And they invited me to do a Zoom meeting, but at the time I just didn't want to. I prefer the face-to-face kind of interactions, especially for training. I find it just far more effective. But that's the only organization that I was supposed to start working with, and that was back in late March.
Well, so you never know.
We're still trying to figure it out. Yeah, we tentatively we'll do it in September.
Yeah, September or October. Yes, it's gonna depend on what's going on. So I have a question for you, and you and I both are familiar with this situation, and you may or may not have the answer, but when an owner provides a proxy to someone to attend a meeting, obviously they're not the owner, but they're acting as the proxy. Would be a general meeting, a general member meeting. Can they forcibly or ask that person that's holding the proxy to leave the meeting because they're not the actual owner? Or do they need to honor that individual as the representative for the owner?
So one of the advantages of having a parliamentarian is we are forced to thoroughly familiarize ourselves with the specific rules of that particular association. So every association has their own individual rules, their own CC&Rs. Sometimes they have bylaws also, and that's all in addition to state law. And so the answer to your question is depends upon the specific rules of that association. There's nothing in state law or in parliamentary authority that says specifically every single person has to do this. And so we were talking about Roberts a moment ago. Roberts says that an association and a member is not allowed to use a proxy at all unless there's language specifically in the organizational governing documents that allows it. And if they do allow it, then they have to be specific to that question. So whatever homeowners association you're talking about, it depends upon what it says specifically in their published rules. So if it says only an owner can carry a proxy, which is very, very common, many associations have that language, only the owner can carry a proxy, then yes, the association would have the authority to ask that person to leave the meeting.
Do you ever get asked to be involved when they're actually writing those governing documents?
That's another part of my service. I do a lot of original writing, and I do a lot of editing, rewriting, modification of governing documents.
I mean, I could see how that would be really beneficial, because you have all this experience of problems and issues that have occurred in the past that you can help them write into their governing documents to help them avoid that happening in the future.
That's right. That's right. And I tell my clients that when you write these governing documents, they're not written for today. They're written for at least 5 years in the future. So they have to be very clear so that somebody looking at them 5 years from now will get the gist and understand what it was you were trying to do there. That's one of the biggest problems for us, is it just isn't clear what they meant by this when they wrote it.
Yeah, absolutely. So as far as meetings themselves, what would you say that you've seen or that you've maybe been called into to rescue a situation? What would you say you've seen just nightmare, a nightmare situation, or maybe the most common mistake that folks make, that boards make?
So I'm going to answer your question a little differently. I like to tell people nobody calls a plumber until their toilet overflows. We always try to jiggle the handle or get a plunger and fix the toilet. And not until it actually overflows do we say, uh-oh, this is beyond our capabilities, we better call a plumber. The same thing's true with parliamentarians. Most groups don't call me until their toilet is overflowing and they're out of control. And usually it's because of a rogue member. Sometimes it's because they just got really caught up in one particular issue and the meeting just ended up falling apart because really nobody knew what to do. The biggest problem is, I'll just say it bluntly, everybody thinks they know parliamentary procedure because everybody was introduced to it at some point in their life, high school or college, or maybe they had a PTA or something, so they learned part of it. But nobody learned it absolutely, completely, 100% correctly. So in a meeting of 7 board members or even 5 board members, they all have a different idea of what they're supposed to do next. And they disagree and they have conflict. And at that point, they say, you know what, we need to call in a parliamentarian. But the usual reason I'm called in is because of a rogue member. There's one member that just refuses to cooperate with the other members, and the board just doesn't know what to do about this one person. So the parliamentarian, if nothing else, is an incredibly calming influence just to have that person there.
Yeah,
because it's kind of like don't mess around because we have the professional, we have the expert here now, so you're not going to take advantage.
Right, you're not emotionally involved either. So we're going to take a little break, and we'll be back to pick your brain a little bit more. All right, thanks everyone. We'll see you in a minute.
Aloha. My name is Mark Shklov. I am the host of ThinkTech Hawaii's Law Across the Sea program. Being a lawyer has many aspects, and I try to cover them every time I do a program of Law Across the Sea. Not everything has to do with law or being a lawyer per se. Some of it has to do with the people you meet, the things you see, the places you visit. And that's what I try to combine in ThinkTech Hawaii's Law Across the Sea. Thank you for watching. Aloha.
Aloha and welcome back to Condo Insider. I am your volunteer host, Krista Stadler, here with our parliamentarian expert, Bruce Bishop. So Bruce, I have a couple of questions, and this is just from me noodling around on the internet, but is there a difference between the conduct in a board meeting and how the Roberts rules apply versus a general meeting? Are they stricter? Are they more lenient?
Good question. And that is actually one of the problems that occurs when people don't really have a grasp of parliamentary rules, but more specifically Roberts rules. And that's one of the problems when organizations are mandated to use Roberts Rules of Order. It just doesn't make sense that is the law. But again, we could talk about that later. Roberts Rules of Order and all parliamentary authorities allow small boards, which are defined generally as under 10, to be significantly more relaxed with the rules. In fact, some of them don't even apply with small board. For example, we all know that the chairperson's not supposed to vote, the chairperson's not supposed to make motions and not supposed to take place in debate. That is completely the opposite in a small board. We invite and encourage the chair to 100% participate. And then we don't time speeches, and we don't require motions to be seconded, and we don't require people to raise their hand to be recognized in a small board. So the rules, not actual practice, but the rules are allowed to be much more relaxed in a board than they are in a general membership meeting. And that just makes sense. The more people that are involved, then the more the more unruly it could get, in which case we just have to have rules to control that behavior.
And I have seen that, and I've attended many board meetings. I've seen that firsthand. So
that's right.
Yes,
that's right.
Yeah. Could do a whole reality show on that, I'm telling you.
Hey, maybe that's our next project.
I know. Yeah, it could be. Put that with property management and real estate. Wow, we'd have a whole saga.
All right,
so when you said 10 board, did you mean 10 board members or 10 members altogether?
No, 10 board members. A board of 10 or now this is specific to Robert's Rules of Order, which Hawaii mandates. If it's 10 or less members of a board, then the rules are relaxed.
That are together.
But that's not in concrete either. And that's the other thing people have to understand about Roberts is Roberts kind of just says, hey, here's a whole bunch of rules, and you should take a look at these and pick the ones that work best for you. I tell people it's like a toolbox. You have all of these tools in the toolbox, but you only take out the ones that work for you. You don't have to use every single tool in the toolbox, and you don't have to use every single rule in Roberts. Again, which one of the problems I have when you mandate something like Robert's Rules of Order.
And that would be really challenging. That would be like giving, sending me in to do surgery and saying, oh, here's all the scalpels and all the different things you need.
Yeah.
When it's kind of crazy, you know, it needs to be a little bit more.
And again, people who say they know Roberts, I wonder how well they do. Most people would be surprised to learn that there are 86 different motions in Robert's Rules of Order. I mean, everybody knows the motion to table something, or the motion to buy something, or the motion to take a recess, or the motion to adjourn, or the motion to second, or the motion to nominate. But there's 86, Krista, 86 different motions. And,
wow.
I mean, it's so complex.
It sounds like it. And I know we've had discussions on other shows with other hosts about sometime in the future implementing some type of, I don't want to say mandated, but board member training. In other words, once you've been elected, you have to go through some kind of like a mini certification, or, you know, just like we do with real estate, have to go through different types of ethics classes and whatnot, just to really make them equipped to do the best job possible, you know? Yeah.
Some of the organizations I work with actually do that. They mandate that the board once a year receives training.
Yeah. And do you find that the rules vary greatly from state to state? Because I know you work in quite a few states.
I don't know if I'd say greatly, but there are some very, very stark differences from one state to the other. California, I think, is the most strict of all the states. They have very specific and very stringent rules related to the election of board members and modification of CC&Rs. Some states are very relaxed. Like California mandates a public forum, for example, which absolutely mandates that at the beginning of every meeting, you have to allow homeowners to address the board on any subject under their jurisdiction. Most states don't have that mandate. California has very strict quorum standards, and some states have very low quorum standards. Like Washington, I think the quorum standard is 35% in order to pass a motion or for a board election and that sort of thing. Some states are very rigid on the passing of a budget, and other states just make it like any other motion. The budget's just like anything else. So the rules do change from state to state. Absolutely.
Wow, very interesting. And where do you find that you're spending most of your time in California? Is that as far as your clients? Are they the majority in California?
Well, no, most of my clients are, I do a lot of traveling. As you know, one of my bases is California, but I do a lot of traveling around the country. There's very few professional parliamentarians with my certification, and so I don't have a great deal of competition, but I find myself traveling a great deal. Most of the associations that I work with have base in Washington, D.C. or on the East Coast, New York, Alexandria, Virginia. But I do have several clients in California also. And so I travel a lot.
Yeah. And now you Zoom a lot.
And lately I've been doing a lot of Zooming. That's right.
A lot of Zooming. Yes.
Yeah.
Which may change the industry and how things are done going forward, you know? I mean, it really may.
I'm an in-person guy, but you're absolutely right.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, just the cost of airfare and the time it takes to get from here to there.
Right. Yeah. But some of my clients are too big to do that. One of my clients is the National Association of Letter Carriers, the postal carriers, and their meetings have over 10,000 voting delegates, and they just can't do that on a Zoom meeting.
No.
Even the California Association of Realtors, one of my oldest clients, they have 3 board meetings a year, and they have 800 voting delegates. And again, it's very problematic. We've done the last 2 meetings by Zoom, and it can be done, but there's other things we do at meetings besides just vote. There's a huge networking that occurs at meetings also that you simply lose when we do it virtually.
Oh, I feel, I mean, I was so involved with, you know, Chamber of Commerce and our National Association of Residential Property Managers and all different organizations. You know me, I'm out there, and it's all stopped. And it's really, it's tough not having that social interaction, you know, and I'm much better face-to-face. This is second best to a telephone call, but, and a phone call is better than texting or emailing. But yeah, I'm all about face-to-face, so for sure.
Yeah.
So here's a question for you. I know we're getting kind of close to the end, but have you ever had a situation where you were called in, you know, you've got that one rogue board member and you're just not able to level things out, and or is there any recourse for the other members to basically have that rogue member or the one that they can't work with voted off, basically?
Yeah, good question. Also, it goes back to state law. Most state laws have language within code that talks about how to recall a board member, but the board itself has no authority to recall a board member. So, but interestingly, though, the board can dismiss its president pretty easily. And so oftentimes the person that's the problem is the person they elected to be president because they think they're the boss. And I work with a lot of boards, and I say the president's not the boss. In fact, the chairperson of the meeting is the easiest person to replace, and just takes a vote of the board to replace the chair. But I've run into a lot of challenging situations where I get called in, and again, it's just amazing how intimidating, and I use that word loosely, just the mere presence of a professional parliamentarian. I write a script that they should use to introduce me and why I am there, and it just seems like automatically everybody starts behaving. And so I've never had a situation that was just totally uncontrollable. We've always been able to figure out and manage it.
And when you left, if they were to have another meeting, from that point on, are you pretty much involved if they hire you with all their meetings?
That's the other thing, you know. Unlike the plumber, when I do come in and solve a problem, they say, you know, we should have hired you a long time ago, and that's when I end up getting long-term contracts. And most of these organizations say, we should have brought you in a whole long time ago, and why don't we bring you to all of our meetings from now on?
Awesome. So any thoughts of retiring anytime in the near future? I know you just had a birthday.
I know, it's too fun. I really, you know, I very much enjoy it. I'm one of the very few people in the world who will honestly say I enjoy going to meetings. The homeowner meetings I always enjoy, but because at least I understand what they're talking about. One of my clients is the National Association of Airline Mechanics, labor union. I have no idea what those guys are talking about, but I still enjoy the dynamics of a meeting. It's still fun for me, and I still enjoy it a lot. Yeah,
that's great.
About it.
Yeah. Oh, you're too young anyway. Give it another.
I was going to say, you're not saying I'm old, right?
No, but not at all.
Yeah. It's too fun. I'm enjoying it.
Especially if you have flexibility and you enjoy what you're doing and you feel value and it's purposeful, then that's amazing. What more do you really want?
I don't work that much. I only do maybe 1 or 2 jobs a month anyway.
That's amazing. Why wouldn't you do it? I want that job when I grow up and to be your age.
All right, I'll train you.
So we're at about 2 minutes from the end. Is there any other words of wisdom or insight you would like to share with the folks of Hawaii and the world that are watching?
I tell people there's only one reason to have a meeting. And the only reason to have a meeting is to make a decision. That's it. And so whatever else you do at the meeting that's not aimed at making a decision, you got to ask yourself if you're wasting time. And so I tell people that the reason why we have parliamentary rules of order is to have an orderly way of making decisions. That's what it's all about. All of those rules, when used appropriately and applied properly, are all geared towards the process of efficient decision making. Because I tell people, as much as I like going to meetings, there's always something I'd rather be doing. And so I would rather spend less time in the meeting than more. So that's what we need to figure out.
That's great. I just can't thank you enough. It's so great to see your face and have listen to you talk about what you're so passionate about. I really am very happy you were able to join me. And you take care.
I appreciate it.
And I hope to see you soon.
And all right. You can give people my contact information. Thank you, Krista. Aloha.
I will. Thank you, everyone. Thank you for joining us on Condo Insider. Aloha.